The San Francisco Bay Area has seen a lot of varying styles of music flow across its shores over the years and decades. Large wooden floor ballrooms during the big band era beginning way back in the 1920s and really peaking in popularity just prior to and during the war years in the 1940s. As the 1950s made its way into people's lives, jazz became much more prominent, and jazz music was, by and large, much more of a smaller venue form of music. As the decade moved forward, rhythm and blues became more and more popular, and this higher tempo and movement form of music eventually morphed into what we know as rock and roll. The San Francisco Bay Area was not particularly known for any groundbreaking early rock and roll groups. Other areas of the country seem to be doing that, with the places in the South being particularly impactful, with people like Bill Haley and the Comets, who hailed from Chester, Pennsylvania, Chuck Berry, who hailed from St. Louis, Missouri, Buddy Holly, who was from Lubbock, Texas, and a little-known energetic individual named Elvis Presley, who was from Tupelo, Mississippi. This higher-octane form of music fueled the youth of the 1950s as the initial baby boomer children made their way into adolescence and teendom. The San Francisco scene wasn't really a big player in any of this, although some of those early rockers did play shows in the Bay Area. It wasn't until the late 50s and early 60s, with the advent of the beatnik culture and early folk movement, that the San Francisco area became known as a magnet for musically minded individuals. Many of San Francisco's early electric rock and psychedelic bands began their musical careers in the dimly lit folk coffeehouses in locations like North Beach in San Francisco. In the early 60s, an entrepreneurial fellow by the name of Bill Graham made his way west from his home in New York City. He had a music venue in New York called the Fillmore East, and he opened another music venue in San Francisco, located in the Fillmore district, called the Fillmore West. Both of these venues, along with the historic building Winterland, were major musical venues during the tumultuous 1960s and into the 1970s to some degree. However, by the time the Summer of Love had gone its way, and much harder-edged music made its way to America from England with bands like the Kinks, the Rolling Stones, the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Cream, and Led Zeppelin, and American bands like the Rascals, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Jefferson Airplane, the Grateful Dead, Mountain, and many others, the San Francisco music scene became almost oversaturated with talent. Plus, many of these San Francisco music groups had gained a bit of financial success, and they made their way just a little bit north of San Francisco to a sleepy environment dominated by Mount Tam, known as Marin County, an area known for its tranquil hamlets like Mill Valley, Larkspur, San Anselmo, and Ross. The largest city in Marin County at the time was San Rafael, and it was in this city in the 1930s that a developer by the name of Whitey Litchfield opened a roadside motel on East Francisco Boulevard, which is a bit of a frontage road to Highway 101 known as the Bermuda Palms. A few years later, he added a large ballroom that hosted many big-name big bands during that era, and sat dormant for many years when he was approached by a couple of entrepreneurial-type guys from the East Coast, and they persuaded Whitey to let them put on music events at the location. The first known rock-era music show held there was in July of 1967, and the venue was known as the Bermuda Palms Ballroom. The lineup consisted of the Sons of Chaplin, Baltimore Steam Packet, Thursday's Island, and the Four Kings. Also held at the Bermuda Ballroom was a rather notorious Hells Angels fundraiser party that featured Big Brother and the Holding Company, without Janis Joplin on vocals, Gold, and Janis Joplin's new band Full Tilt Boogie. This band was billed as Main Squeeze, but that band had broken up by the time this performance came to be. The next incarnation of the venue was known as the Euphoria Ballroom and hosted a total of 4 shows in July of 1970. July 3rd, 4th, and 5th saw Big Brother and the Holding Company take the stage with Nick Gravinatus providing the vocals after the departure of Janis Joplin from the group earlier that year. On July 14th and 16th, the Grateful Dead, the New Riders of the Purple Sage, and Rubber Duck showcased their talents to a curious crowd of onlookers. The night of July 20th saw Country Joe and the Fish with their unique brand of country rock and Southern Comfort, a country rock group transplanted from Great Britain. July 24th, 25th, and 26th had the Chambers Brothers tearing it up along with Boz Scaggs offering up his unique voicing of the blues, and again, Southern Comfort. It was in September of 1970, and after a rather extensive renovation of the location, that Pepperland first opened its doors for audiences. The initial concert held at the Pepperland Ballroom was Hot Tuna, made up of various members of Jefferson Airplane and violinist Papa John Creech. Captain Beefheart, and Charles Lloyd filled out the bill for that night's performances. The Pepperland Ballroom was probably best known for the incredible sound system that was installed in it. This was a custom-made system by a company called Glyph, and it was a full quadraphonic sound system with speaker horns so large that people could actually lay in them. No doubt the most famous quadraphonic recording that was undertaken at Pepperland was in October of 1970, when Pink Floyd did a show there with Kimberly and Osceola. This performance was simulcast on 2 FM radio stations in the Bay Area, KQED-FM along with KMPX-FM. This sort of broadcast had never been done before, and there is no record of it ever being done again after this historic broadcast. Throughout the remainder of 1970, Pepperland would play host to a vast array of musical acts. Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, Tim Buckley, Steve Miller, Dan Hicks and his Hot Licks, Joy of Cooking, Leon Russell, Chuck Berry, Joan Baez, the Youngbloods, Sea Train, Stone Ground, Elvin Bishop, Tower of Power, Clover, Spencer Davis, Lee Michaels, John Lee Hooker, It's a Beautiful Day, Taj Mahal, Boz Scaggs, Linda Ronstadt, and Quicksilver Messenger Service, just to name a few. They continued their presence in the Bay Area music scene on through 1971 and 72 with a final closing performance by Tower of Power, Redbone, and Roger Collins on January 22, 1972. There may have been Bay Area venues that attracted more media attention during this hectic period of time in America's history, but few, if any, had as much musical impact to a certain area as did the Pepperland Ballroom. However, there are many Bay Area musicians that never really made it to the big time, but still enjoyed much praise and respect from the musical community. Now, not many of these musicians had the opportunity to play at venues like the Fillmore or the Pepperland Ballroom, but they still had a strong following and oftentimes played at smaller venues like the Lion's Share, located in picturesque San Anselmo. This was a funky single-story building built in the 1920s that was, at one time, a hardware store, and it was located right on the border between San Anselmo and San Rafael at 60 Red Hill Boulevard. This establishment hosted many well-known bands of the era, as well as up-and-coming local musicians and a vast array of musical transplants from across the country. People like Merle Saunders and Mike Finnegan were frequent players on the bill, along with Harvey Mandel, who was an absolute guitar wizard prodigy guy who passed away far too early. Many bigger-name players had side projects or would try out new material at the Lion's Share prior to exposing it to a larger audience. Jerry Garcia was well known for this and was a frequent guest at the Lion's Share. Elvin Bishop, long before his mass success with Fooled Around and Fell in Love, spent many a night sweating it out on the stage at the Lion's Share. Mike Finnegan, along with his then musical partner Jerry Wood, put on great show after great show at the Lion's Share, billed as Finnegan and Wood. The Lion's Share was the location of the goodbye party for Janis Joplin that was stipulated in her last will and testament. The Lion's Share tragically closed its doors as a music venue in the late 70s, and the location is now a metal fabrication business. We would like to thank the Marin Historical Society, along with blogger Doug Sham, for his great input for this project. All of us here appreciate all the musicians who graced the stages of all of these musical venues. I feel that it would be a near impossibility to include them all, and we hope that the audience of this video appreciates the information we have put forth. Feel free to like and subscribe, and go ahead and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of any upcoming videos we may produce. Again, thank you all, and keep on rockin'. It is, after all, the American way.